I've always been fascinated by how different people look at the same piece of art and interpret it in completely unique ways. Even with the exact same starting point, everyone's brain works differently. And today, we are putting that to the test. Me and a few friends decided to take one single reference photo, set a loose time limit of a few hours, and go our separate ways to build. No tips, no picking, and zero collaboration. We want to see how our individual styles and creative choices take us in totally different directions. At the end, we are going to reveal our work to each other and see each other's interpretations. Now let's see my build process. So to get the right scale and measurement for the build, the way I do it is by starting at a section that is easy to translate to Minecraft. With this build, it's the pillars. When I saw them for the first time, I knew I had an idea for how to do them. So I knew I wanted the pillars to be 2 by 2. I started with that and continued with that scale for the rest of the build. Once I had one side of it finished, I copied it to the other side and started blocking out the wall that connects the ends with the same scale in mind. I left the inspiration image on screen so you can see why I made the choices I made, and judge for yourself if they make sense. After I finished half of the wall, I copy it to the other side and then connect it all together. I turn it all into emerald blocks so I can work with my favorite shaping blocks, diamond blocks, for the terrain. I started with getting the rough silhouette shape of the mountain in the back, then I move on to the front. I started with plopping some normal smooth terrain there, but as you can see in the image, the terrain there looks more like boulders, so I started pasting a bunch of differently shaped boulders around using Axiom. Here I noticed that the terrain sinks down at that part, so I made some more space for it below. Now I wanted to see if I could color the mountain exactly how it is in the image, but as you can see I gave up pretty quickly. We'll come back to that in the end. I moved on to refine the shape of the mountain while keeping in mind the angle the build is going to be viewed from. I will say, we all decided to not go fully in with this build because that would take a lot of time and building the best looking build was not the point of the video. So because the terrain is not the main thing about this image, I did kinda rush it. Now we get to a point I want to highlight, the way I textured the boulders. Of course doing it by hand would give the best results, but I ended up doing it using Axiom. I picked a green palette that matches the colors of the grassy bits in the image and colored the top of the boulders with it but not the edges. I then colored only 50% of those edges. That way it looks like the grass is mostly on top but some of it seeps into the edges. After that, I colored the rest with a black palette, just like how it is in the image, but the boulders that are further back I colored with more grey tones. I then colored the rest of the terrain with matching color themes and added short grass and bushes to the boulders, which I will change towards the end. I also added a path, even though it's not in the image, because I feel like it makes sense with how I've built it so far. Now you can see the idea I had for the pillars in the beginning. I can't remember where I saw it first, but it was years ago at this point. Alternating sets of spiral staircase look like decorative pillars. Even though the pillars do not look like this in the image, I really wanted to make this work ever since I saw the image for the first time. So here we are. Now we are getting to a rough part. You probably don't know this unless you know me, but this kind of build and style is a complete 180 from what I'm used to and what I usually build in Minecraft. Here are some examples of my previous projects so you can get an idea. So texturing this was kinda hard for me. I didn't know how to start, so I just started placing blocks to see if I liked what I end up with. I tried matching the colors I saw in the image to the build, but we don't have those exact colors in Minecraft. So as you can see, I started just blasting it with signs, thinking it would fix it by connecting the colors more. But at the end, I did not like what I came up with. Failure is the most important part of the building process, or in life in general. That's how we learn the best. So I decided to try a different approach. I picked a block that has a wall type and that I knew I wouldn't use, and started shaping the other side of the build. I ended up not using this at all, but it was a nice mental break for me from the hard texturing part, and a good thing to do in general if you're stuck. I copied the part I was working on to the side to work on it on a copy, just in case I ended up not liking it more than what I already made. I started with blocking out the rough shapes of the two main colors, the light blue and magenta terracotta. After that, I told myself I needed to stop trying to blend the colors together, because that's what we usually do when building, and accept it as it is in the image. In the image, they are not mixed at all. They work well together, but the transitions between them are harsh, and that's okay. What I did was, in both cases, the magenta and light blue terracotta, the blocks I placed next to them are blocks that would transition the color to a more light gray, whitish tone, and I didn't try to blend them too much. I accepted the harsh edges. I liked what I came up with at the end, so I copied it over to the previous texturing I made, and with that same logic I textured the rest of the build. This is the most time-consuming part of the build process because it has to be done by hand. I did bring back the signs, mostly at the top parts, because it allowed me to both texture those parts with different blocks but also have it like a uniform color streaks, kinda like it is in the image. And to finish it off, I added the man that is in the front the best way I could. I colored all the ugly sandstone with the same grass colors, and for the grassy part on the mountain, I colored the edges of it with 50% grass tones so it would look more like grass patches on the mountain. Then I added the short grass, ferns and bushes all over the new grassy areas, and the build is finished. So at the end of the day, even though this type of build isn't my style, I'm pretty happy with what I came up with. I think I pulled off the unique colors in an interesting way, and the shaping of the build is pretty accurate to the one in the inspiration picture. And for how rushed the terrain was, it came out passable. My goal with this challenge was to see to what level I can recreate the structure and its texturing, and then to see how fast I can do the terrain to match it with tools like Axiom and Word Edit. I think I did alright. Please feel free to leave feedback in the comments below. Now I do want to show you and talk a little bit about what my other 4 friends did with these inspiration pictures. So let's first take a look at Sieves. So straight off the bat, you can see that it looks different from what I made, but it still resembles what we saw in the inspiration picture, which is what this is all about. I like how he and I went with the same direction with the terrain, but instead of doing boulders like I did, Siv made it look like the terrain has different levels, yet they are connected to each other. As for the structure, he went with a slightly bigger scale, and it shows in the details he managed to cram in here, for example the pillars and the top of the towers. Moving on to Dai, you can notice immediately how small the scale is here, which is quite interesting. The terrain flows together nicely, and if you noticed, he placed glass panes towards the top of the towers to give them a different hue, which is something I never thought to do like this. Now let's look at Pickles. He went with a similar scale to mine, but the way he did it, the texturing could not be more different. He used a bunch of glass to try and blend the hard transition in colors more fluidly, and for the top of the towers, he interpreted them as windows and not supports like I did. As for the terrain, he also has different levels to it, kinda like what Siv did, but in different style. Last but not least, we have Jasper. Jasper has a very unique and distinctive style of texturing, and you can clearly see how he treats the blocks like color strokes rather than blocks. He also chose to go with a bigger scale than all of us, mostly to have more room to make those color strokes really work. So yeah, that's all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Until next time, see ya!